Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an ETTO spoiler cast for season 2 of The Bad Batch. The Star Wars boys back. I think that's what we are now. We just talk about Star Wars basically. Yeah. That's all we do here.
Star Wars, shrinking, and Ted Lasso. That's all we've got.
Yeah, that's why we talk about in our own DMs as well. It's not too different. So we just make up an excuse to talk about it to camera sometimes.
Yep.
And yeah, this is another season of the follow-up show to the Clone Wars, which went.
It is.
It sure is. Which went for 7 seasons. This show looks like it's carving out its own bunch of seasons. By the way, it all ended and wrapped up and stuff. But But just off the top, we're largely going to be. We're not going to do a spoiler-free section.
Yeah,
I think we both liked the season, but maybe just some general thoughts. You can wade into spoilers a little bit. So if you haven't seen season 2 of The Bad Batch, look away now. Go watch it. Please watch it, because I don't think many people are, and it'd be nice for them to get a few more numbers.
Totally. I quite like this season. I think I liked it. I don't know if I like the season more than season 1, but I liked more episodes in this season than I did season 1. There's more stories in here that I think I'll remember than I did of the first run. I think what this show is slowly becoming is interesting, and I hope that they lean into it harder. Season 1 had the 2 Hera episodes that were almost separate to the main story and focused on her. This one had a lot of Crosshair and then the person in Coruscant stuff. I mean, that could apply to any Star Wars show at the moment. But I quite I would almost like if there is 40% the Bad Batch story, and then the rest of it is just these little anthology side stories, because that's where this season sings. The Crosshair solo missions were really, really good, and stuff like that. So I definitely enjoyed this a lot more. I think that I hope that after 2 seasons, they kind of nail down what a season looks like for this show, because when it slumps, it's still beautiful to look at, and there's some fun there, but it is the highs are so high, and when it hits a rock bottom, it's fuck, what was that, man?
Totally.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. But I enjoyed it, 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up those little side stories, because to me, this season felt more like I was watching a season of Clone Wars.
Totally.
In maybe mostly good, but in some little bad ways. And I think in the bad ways, it just felt at moments, it was just I hate to use the word filler episode because it's become a whole separate thing. But there were moments in this when I was oh yeah, this is just kind of feels like it's here to fill out the weekly kind of Bad Batch thing, which is fine. But
I had 10 eps, but you were we've got a 16 run. So,
but in the good sense, it felt a lot more like Clone Wars in that it felt like we kind of got away from that core group of characters, which, while interesting, I feel like there's only so many stories you can tell with that core group, and obviously with how the season kind of panned out, they become aware of that likely and kind of change up what that core group looks like. But I think they rightly identified that there are other interesting stories within this kind of period of Star Wars to be telling, and that it doesn't necessarily need to be focused around these specific characters. It obviously ties back to these characters in a bunch of different ways, but similarly to what Mando is doing at the moment, I think some people might not like it, but I think less of a focus on maybe the main characters when those main characters' story is not necessarily progressing along too much, and kind of going away and focusing on these side stories that ultimately are relevant, but are not at the same time are not just Omega and Tech chatting one day, which is nice to see occasionally, but I don't want to see that for 16 episodes. So yeah,
totally. It is a funny thing, both this and Mando did so many similar things. It is weird. It does feel like the story group were on similar levels, or in similar chats, because there's a lot of Coruscant stuff, there's a lot of cloning stuff, obviously. It does feel like the 2 shows were playing with each other.
Crazy. I don't know what's going on over there, but the fact that not only the fact that their stories are similar, but the fact that they simultaneously released in all this time, I feel like not a big deal was made out of it. But
it felt like the first half of the season didn't do it, but as soon as Mando started, the show started to connect with it.
And
it wasn't.
Was that the plan? It doesn't it feels kind of unintentional, but at the same time, like maybe it was. And like, it's this crazy thing. This feels like an extended animated season to go alongside Mando, which is kind of nice. But it kind of feels like there's a level of connection going on in Star Wars, but at the same time, it's this weird thing of like, as I said, I don't think many people are watching this show. So with like this cloning through line that we talked a little bit about in our Mando podcast, coming into this show and kind of like fleshing that out, I'm kind of worrying if that is something they want to explain, how much that is going to get through, not only to like the general populace, because as we've discussed, the general populace doesn't care, it's just a Star Wars, but also maybe to like the more hardcore fans who also don't really have time to watch Bad Batch or aren't really aware of Bad Batch. They might just flat out not be aware of it, because it's hard to find. Every time I open the Disney Plus app, I have to scroll to find this one. It's crazy.
Disney, if a Star Wars thing drops or a Marvel thing drops, make it the banner.
Yeah.
I know you got a lot of cool stuff, but just make it the first thing that pops up. Just do it. Yeah. Make it easy.
But yeah, no, it's just crazy the way these kind of like coexist at the moment. I love it personally, but yeah, I'm kind of... It's fascinating to see this kind of Favreau-Filoni verse of Star Wars flesh itself out. And I'm wondering at what point they're going to start hitting some of the pain points that Marvel hit, or if they might be able to like navigate around them or something.
Yeah.
I think we're like within a year of having those conversations, because at this point it's looking quite good. But
I think this is not that much, but the next show, Ahsoka, is going to be the test of like, can people just watch these shows without everything else? But we'll see. We'll see.
Absolutely.
But this show,
Bad Batch, yes, we're going to talk about Bad Batch. It's fine. We talked a little bit about Bad Batch in our Mando episode.
That's true.
Go back and forth, as we talked about. They're all connected. This show, 16 episodes, second season. So we now have 32 episodes of this show. I kind of like that they're committing to the 16 at the same time as it feels like a bit much. It feels a bit more like that Saturday morning cartoon, like watch an episode a week for a little while.
If they release them on Saturdays or like Friday nights for us, so
it would be so nice.
That'd be
instead
awesome.
of Wednesdays. Wednesdays so packed. Please stop releasing stuff on Wednesdays. But yeah, no, it's kind of, it's a nice contrast to like their classic like 8 episode, 10 episode marquee seasons, to have like kind of these longer lasting things. Going into a brief overview of the story for the season. A lot of the early parts of the season kind of centers around the Bad Batch doing stuff for Sid, doing little jobs and stuff. Meanwhile, we have a few side stories going on with Crosshair, who is now working for the Empire, and they kind of have a back and forth there of like Crosshair navigating the Empire, slowly trying to phase out clones out of their army, and kind of an undertone of like this weird cloning stuff that's happening on a separate Imperial planet. And then we kind of go back and forth between them and the Bad Batch. And at some point, just kind of happens at the start of an episode, the Bad Batch, it's like, we don't like Sid. We're not hanging out with Sid. I'm not wrong, right? There wasn't a moment where this happened. They just said it at the start of an episode.
I think they just were like, I don't know about her.
Yeah.
And just moved on.
Yeah. Which is fascinating because it feels like quite a big story point. And then we kind of have the Bad Batch going off on their own with treasure hunter lady whose name I can't remember. And then they kind of go with her and go to this isolated planet called Pabu. And then
I may have not watched. I think I I just didn't watch 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Which I think were her ones.
No, totally. I think at a similar point in the middle of the season where it was watching the corner of my eye while I'm doing something on my phone.
Yeah.
It was
I will go back to them, but I was just like, I missed them and then watched the episode without them and I was like, I'm fine.
Yeah, totally. There was like a treasure hunting episode or something with her. Anyway, and then they kind of like go to the sanctuary planet and there's kind of a discussion of if they want to settle down, not be soldiers anymore. The Echo, Crosshair, cloning, all that stuff happens. They come back around to the end of the season. Big fight between Bad Batch and Empire dudes. Bad Batch lose out. That's how we lead into what is probably going to be a season 3. It's a pretty stock standard, like Star Wars story at this point. I don't feel like there's a lot to like go into the depth of that kind of thing. But I think I actually kind of liked, because it was obvious later on in the season when they went to Pabu and they were like, we're going to settle down. I was like, you're not going to settle down. Something's going to go wrong. And I kind of like the way they brought it around in the end. I feel like they've given the show a good incentive to move forward, versus the point where I feel like we hit in the last couple episodes where I was like, what is this show now? If this show continues to exist, which they probably will want it to, or probably will want some kind of spin-off to exist, what would it be? Is it just going to focus on the Empire? What's that kind of thing? And I think not only separating themselves and not Echo, there's so many different names, themselves and Omega, but also having Tech leave, die, and have like the team be rejigged again, have Echo kind of join up again. I feel like it's created it. What this show could have fallen into is having the same dynamic of the same characters over and over again for 3 seasons, and it just kind of getting boring. As we kind of mentioned, them diverging and doing other storylines in this helped a lot with that. But I think being able to kind of freshen up that team, that core group that we're going to be journeying with going forward, I think is a good thing. And they also like took risks with the storytelling. Like, I think Tech dying at the end of this season is like a big deal, and like. Now you look back at the season, they spent a lot of time with him. It makes a lot of sense that they were building up to that. Totally. But at the same time, the fact that they spent that time with him, it felt earned. Like it didn't. His death didn't feel like it was just like, oh, we're offing one of the characters because we need to freshen things up, which it is. But it was also like, no, we know enough about this character. We know this is the decision they'd make, and I'm happy. I'm happy they got to that point, because I reckon halfway through the season, if you told me Tech was going to die at the end, I'd be like, oh, whatever. Yeah, totally. I mean, that was one of the things I loved about this season was how much we didn't really get much with everyone. It's very funny that Hunter very quickly became a background character. He was kind of the protagonist of season 1. He's the Mario.
He is the Mario. Yeah. We like, and I'm glad he did, because one of the things I hated the most, again, running alongside Mando, was having another character that was like, I need to look after the child. The child is my and I'm like, okay, cool. And you know, Omega is born of a clone. There's no way that she can't protect herself. So I'm glad that they kind of, you know, it's still around this season, but they separated it. But yeah, I loved the time we spent with Tech. He was definitely my favorite by the end of it. And so when that moment all gets set up, I'm like, damn it. Yeah. I should have known this was coming. But I mean, look, the thing that in my morbid brain was, I really thought that the end of the show was they were all going to die, like, or they were all going to be kidnapped and taken. Like, I thought, because I didn't really know if there was a season 3 like commissioned. I was kind of like, oh, is this show just sad? Like, is this actually, the whole thing is built up for us to realize that not everyone gets out, and that
it was a thought. It was a thought I did have, but I was also I was also like, there was enough in this season where I was like, there's going to be more, whatever it is. And I feel like, that would have been cool to kind of have a wrap up in that way. But I feel like the resolution they came to is still kind of that. It's like still kind of, it's like sad. Like, they wanted to just go to Pabu and like retire and like live a happy life, and they can't do that. They're so intrinsically linked to this empire and this ongoing fight that no matter what they do, they can't actually have that. And that's, I hope and don't, because I also like happiness, but I want sadness in my shows. I hope they mainline the fact that Crosshair and possibly now Tech are like gonna become Death Troopers, or like at the beginning. Like, it's sad if we never hear them be normal again, but it would be so haunting if by the time the Bad Batch get there, obviously Omega's going to be fine because it's a child and they're not going to do anything there. But if they get there and they're just too late and 2 of the batch are forever gone, I'm like, that would be so painful. But totally. I just don't want them to cheap out on that. Yeah, and it feels like with Omega coming at the end and seeing Crosshair at that point, I initially was like, oh, it's going to be like Crosshair's redemption moment. But then when they talk about like he's recovering, like he's far gone, and he just looks like basically a zombie. I was like, oh, okay, we're maybe not doing that. And I also hope they like double down on like that, like this is the consequence of like Crosshair like go like staying with them and like all that kind of stuff. Like he has his minor redemption moment. I feel like he's had the redemption moment where he was able to call it into them. He was able to like warn them of what was going on. And I feel like doing any more with that would kind of like
it's like I don't
that
want
moment.
Yeah, because with Star Wars shows, it's so hard to, because there's such a wide canon. It's like, I don't want this show to end and they're all together on Pabu. Like,
totally.
I want this to end and like, maybe they're all dead. Like, it's just, or they're in places where we can never get to them again. Because it'd be nice for one of these Star Wars shows to have an end. Like, totally. The Filoni verse is built on, they can come back. Like, it'd be cool if this show does have a finite end for characters.
I look at season 7 of Clone Wars, and obviously Bad Batch was part of that. And there were some lighter parts of that, but I look at the ending of that show, and I think some, like, that's Order 66 and Ahsoka kind of coming to terms with that. An ending similar to that with Bad Batch, I think would be what I'd be happy with not necessarily everyone dying, and maybe some characters, Omega maybe sticking around, or her sister.
What a reveal that was.
To like live beyond this show. But I think I have faith that after like Clone Wars season 7 and stuff, that they can do something like that with this show. Even Rebels has like a kind of bittersweet ending.
Ezra being lost and shit.
And I think it would be nice to see something similar for this show. I guess I don't want to talk too much forward, but I guess what more do you feel like this show has to go with? How much
I don't know.
more potential do you feel like it has at this point?
I agree that they've left it on a cool place to have it all shifted around, but I still don't know what the goal is. It kind of is in the same place as Mando currently, where I'm like, what are you here like, what is the conceit of this show now? Because with Clone Wars, it was obvious, it was fill in the gaps, and it was give stories of the clone adventures and all that, whereas I think now that they're broken up, it's a cool change up, but I don't know what the driving force of the show is. At the same time, I didn't at the start of this season either. Like, it's a very vague show until it isn't, which is quite interesting and quite cool. I think if anything, I would love more time with Wrecker to make him less of the dumb Drax character.
Oh yes, please.
They almost do it so often. There's a lot of nice moments with him and in Omega. Why are they so similar? Echo and Omega.
That's the one I crossed over too. It's tough.
There's some nice moments, but he is still such a background brute character that I think if anything, I'd like him to be so interesting that he dies next season.
No, totally.
That's what I would like from it.
I think I see a world in which we get 2 more seasons of this show. I also see a world in which we get 1 more season of this show. I feel like they're trying to cover all their timeline, right? So I feel like they're trying to round out the in between end of episode 3 and Rebels. Potentially. I don't know if we see any characters from Rebels.
Well, I was going to say, it's an interesting one because this show actually does, similar to Fallen Order, skirts around a lot of the big name characters. Like, obviously Tarkin and even Krennic showed up, but really there isn't, I mean, the Palpatine, like, relevant characters show up, but it doesn't really just insert things that don't belong in the way that, other stuff does. I don't know. I'm interested to know, because it's like, do they become parts of the rebellion? Like, there's very early on in this season, we get a little bit of Saw Gerrera, and at the end of it, which was cool. That was a cool little sudden totally insertion. But they kind of stray away from it, which is interesting because this era is just Rebels versus Empire in our mind.
Totally.
It's interesting that this is it has strayed away from the rebellion in a way that I was not anticipating. I don't know if it comes back around so that, they're on the table for Andor and for other this era shows.
I personally think I'm not necessarily saying they're going to cross over with Rebels and that kind of thing. I just feel like they're almost they might cross a bit over into Rebels timeline, but like telling.
Oh, we got Hera.
Telling the Empire side of that story, like telling the rise of the rise of the Empire alongside Rebels, which shows the fight back of the rebellion at that same kind of time. I feel like that's maybe where they're going with this. Yeah, I don't see it going much beyond where we get to in like A New Hope and that kind of thing. But yeah, I also agree. I would love to see more of Wrecker and make him a character that I like, because I just hate the Drax character archetype that has been created. I don't necessarily... I mean, I have problems with Drax, but I don't necessarily hate Drax himself. I just hate that it's become a very cliched character.
Totally. For everything I love of Guardians, it's so sad to see how much it's permeated media when they're like, we need a group. Drax type.
Yeah, like, totally. And I feel like there's a very good chance we have that time with him now, because looking at that team, it is 3 of them, and 2 of them have had time to flesh out their story. Like Echo has quite a big story arc that we've already gone through. So I feel like there's a good chance we get that. But yeah, I'd love to see more of that. I would love to see... I'm fascinated by this cloning storyline. I want to see where that goes, and I think that is probably the life that the show has left in it, is like taking that cloning storyline, taking it through to a point where we then like look at Mando and understand believably how it got to that point. And I also, talking about Rebels and talking about bringing in characters from elsewhere, I would like to see a little bit of Thrawn.
Yeah.
I would like to see Thrawn show up in some capacity, kind of understand why he's become this big person within the Empire. Like, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of one of the... I
mean, that's a 25-minute, like, Thrawn episode, right?
Totally.
They just do the book. They just make the book in an episode, which is sick.
I think that would be, a nice little, like, standalone episode or 2 in there, kind of showing this character who is synonymous with these shows at this point existing. It feels like it would line up well if they bring it out alongside Ahsoka like they're doing with Mando. It feels like it would be a good thing to do. And I don't think it would necessarily be out of place in this show, because there is a rebellious clone team that could come up, butt up heads against this like rising admiral. It seems very, very possible. I would love to see that kind of thing. I know we kind of jumped to the end here, but maybe let's just talk about some of our favorite moments from this season. I think we talked about kind of the overarching story theme and stuff, but I personally love, as we've talked about as well, the separate episodes where we do go and get some like weird vignette kind of episodes. I'm looking at the season, and I think a couple of my favorite episodes, one was the return of the Zillo Beast, and that kind of like horror alien-esque episode, at least for the first half, I thought was fantastic. And the other one was sorry, I've just completely lost it. The episode with Crosshair on the Snow Planet. On the Snow Planet, I thought was fantastic as well. Do you want to talk about any other episodes, or maybe just elaborate on those ones a bit more?
I also like the other Crosshair one, which was the one with Cody, where they have their little solo mission, and there's like battle droids, and that one is like we've made a Clone Wars episode. And for me, I like the Snow one, and I think it's the better episode. But of the two, I think that one is still my favorite one. I think obviously leaning into it, it's not even a character we care about. It's one of those things that I always find funny about Clone Wars. It's like, I don't care about any of the name characters that aren't Rex. Who the fuck are... When I go to the Reddit forums and like one of the clones has come back in this show, one of the ones that like Echo rescues, and they're like, oh my god, it's like, there's no way you know who the fuck that is. Go away.
Absolutely.
But Cody, I think just being the namesake was a cool addition. And that episode just... The Keener brothers that do the music, they are just on top form in this series.
Oh, it was so good. I think that, as the season went on, there was these little, the way I think all Star Wars composers at the moment are kind of weaving all these themes across all the shows. There was a little bit of like the Death Troopers bit from Mando pulled into this season at random times, and just like weird themes and motifs from all the different music are being like pulled across the Star Wars universe, and it's great. It's great that we live in a post John Williams world where all Star Wars isn't just that classic John Williams kind of orchestral theme, but at the same time it's got bits and pieces of it. They're all doing such a good job. You're totally right. They did a fantastic job with this.
And like I said in the Discord, you know it's Crosshair episode when they do Blade Runner music.
Yep.
Like it's just these sweeping, and it's like it just lifts those episodes in such an interesting way. But yeah, no, I adored that one. I adored the action sequences. It was also nice to have that moment with Crosshair doing like the mirrors and stuff, because
so cool.
by the end of the series, they take that from him. Like you can't do it. And it's the perfect amount of Crosshair, but it's like it is one of those ones where it's like, oh, he could be the protagonist. Like he could just be in every episode, but there's a balance to be had. I like that episode, and I mean, the finale was amazing. I think that was kind of it. There's no other episodes that stick out in my mind in the way that like mid-season had the Hera episode last season. There was a few more like obvious bits, but I don't know. Totally. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
I forgot about that episode because it was so early in the season, but I agree that was such like a cool moment of like, oh, this show isn't just Omega and the crew. And
that's true, because it was fairly early on as well. I
think you're right that the amount of Crosshair we got in this season is the perfect amount of Crosshair, because similarly to Wrecker, when Crosshair existed with the Bad Batch earlier on, I was like, oh, you're just so annoying.
It's a stereotype.
It's just like, he's just like the edgy one. But I feel like giving us what they did in this season and like having his story arc, as we said, kind of complete without feeling like we got too much of him or it was too over-explained, I think was really good. The episodes I mentioned earlier, the little return of the Zillow Beast was not something I expected from Bad Batch or any piece of Star Wars, really. But it's just amazing. It's this loose end that has existed within the Clone Wars lore for years that... Like when that episode came out, I didn't even watch it when it came out, but ever since I watched that episode, I'm like, man, they really just never dealt with any of that. And it was a fantastic episode. And then they did. And I was like, wow, you really surprised me there.
It was a great reveal as well, like a slow build until you're just like, hang on a second.
Totally. And like, it makes total sense, but it's like, it weaves into this overarching cloning story they're telling. And it's weird. I like how many elements they're bringing into this cloning thing to kind of make it make sense how weird and messed up Snoke looks in these episode 7 and stuff, being like, he's just an amalgam of like 10 different creatures at this point. So
and it's cool that it's like from different corners of Star Wars as well, because the whole conceit of the Emperor is that he's behind everything, and it's like, is he? But now it's like he's pulling upon so many different threads that it's like, okay, he is pretty smart.
He's pretty damn smart. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies. So I thought that was great, and I love the start of that episode, the way it's kind of weird horror film going through the ship. I thought it was fantastic. I love they're called Scorch Troopers with the blue visors.
Maybe I know that they're from the Republic Commando game. So I guess Commandos. I don't know.
I love the use of them in this series a bit more, because there's something about those lit up visors that, especially within this episode in like the dark ship, worked super well. And I'm kind of enjoying. Not only that, I'm enjoying seeing like all these different kinds of like clones and like early stormtrooper suits and like the crossover there. Similarly, the early TIE fighters, I'm not sure exactly what the ship is called, but the precursor to TIE fighters that existed in like episode 3 and stuff. I'm liking to seeing that slow. You kind of always saw it between like episode 3 and watching episode 4 and like seeing kind of how it got there.
Yeah.
But I'm liking actually seeing that on screen and seeing that transition happening.
I think Milk said in the Discord, they're so lucky that those fighters sound like TIE fighters.
Yeah, totally.
Just like, there's our ties.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. And yeah, I mentioned the other Crosshair episode. I just thought early on in the episode it didn't have me, but when he goes on the journey out into the snow, and there's the moment where they get crushed kind of under the avalanche, and he pulls this other clone out and realizes, like, I feel like it was without many words being spoken, it was a really like pivotal character moment for him, and a very quiet episode. I think that's why I like that one as well. There's not a lot was said in that episode, but there was a lot done with just the animation and the music that I thought was super good. And I want to give a shout out to Pabu. I know people were like, what is this? Why is this in this episode? But I felt it was fun. I felt a little story arc going with Pabu was fun. It was this weird, it was very Clone Wars, like, kind of pulled out of nothing. It was the episode where I was like, I'd show this to my kids. But at the same time, it was really wholesome. And like, even when they have the moment where the tidal wave kind of comes over and stuff, the like kind of happy feeling afterwards where they're all kind of rebuilding the town and stuff, I was like, this makes me feel warm and happy amidst this show, which is like pretty depressing.
Maybe I'll go back. Maybe I will watch it.
I'm just glad it existed within the show is all I'm saying, because I think in a 16 episode season, having those moments of levity is good. And like, to their credit, they kept it as a story thread. They're keeping it relevant. It's not just this place they've gone to once and probably never going to go back to. So
no, that's cool. I appreciate so much of what this show's doing. I like the idea of, like, you know, clones of people. We should look after them post-war is really cool that they've gone into that. And the flip side of that, having that scientist being like, nah, fuck them. They're just test subjects for me.
I love that scientist so much more than Rampart. I'm so glad they kind of just pushed Rampart to the side, the season 1 villain, and brought in this scientist, because I think this scientist is so much... got so much more charisma.
It's Jimmy Simpson's. It's young William from Westworld.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
There you go. So it's one of those castings like James Gunn with his DC universe. I'm like, do you want his man for Andor? Is this where, or like one of the other shows? Because it's like, there's very few characters in this show that are cast for face, and I'm like, it's interesting that you cast that guy, so I wonder if he'll turn up. But totally. When Rampart was involved in the start of the season, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going with this guy? And I'm glad that they kind of... He just felt like a Rebels character. Like, there was so many Imperial villains in that show that I was like, I don't need another one. He reminds me
of that Rebels character whose name I can't remember that comes good at the end.
Callus.
Callus is just a better version of what Rampart is. So
just don't need him.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think the cloning guy was great. I guess we should talk about, just to wrap it up, I guess we should talk about Omega's sister.
The only other character with a Kiwi accent in the show. Like, shall we reveal who this is? Interesting. Like, a cool thing, especially because so much was riding on Omega kind of being the one female clone that we knew of in the show. I don't know what... does that mean that, similar to Omega, she's got bits of Batch in her, or is she just...
Possibly. It's super interesting. Like, it's super interesting, and at the same time, it makes me roll my eyes so much, as you probably could tell from me introducing it. But like, I think it's super interesting in that, I'd love to know in what sense they are sisters, in what, like, how she was created versus how Omega was created, and that stuff.
I agree, though. It is just like, this is where we're going.
But at the same time, I'm like, I don't need that. I feel like there's enough storytelling going on with, like, clones and, like, It's like if they brought in another Grogu into Mando now. It's like, okay, I guess. Totally.
Like, let's talk about another one.
I feel like the sister was brought in here to exist as someone for Omega to interact with in future seasons and future content.
Yeah.
But I actually think the voice actress who plays Omega is really good and like does a good job of portraying that character. And I'd like for them to allow Omega to stand on her own within this space. Like I know some people are a bit annoyed by her, but I wish she didn't need this kind of like foil to play off of and stuff, and like she could have her own moments.
Because not to put her character to a box, but she's the Lisa Simpson, and when Lisa Simpson has a solo episode in The Simpsons, it's always great.
Yeah,
she doesn't need the other Simpsons to be great.
Totally.
And so,
totally. And
totally.
I thought when this Doctor was introduced, they might be doing like a Dr. Aphra kind of thing, and so then just getting into this reveal, I was like, whatever. But you know, maybe they'll take it into interesting places. The show does surprise us in those ways, as we said, with like tech and stuff. So it could be good. But yeah, did roll my eyes a little bit at that ending, being like, all right, all right.
Yeah. Now, do we think we're going to see Rex again? Are they going to just get a one season cameo every? Because I mean, it doesn't cost them anything. It's the same guy. I think to bring him back.
No, totally. Shout out to D. Bradley Baker. We did it last in the Mando podcast. It was so good. Yeah. I think we see Rex again purely because you brought up the fact that they're putting so much focus on clone rights and like making sure that the clones have a life after the Empire and stuff. And we kind of know that doesn't really happen from what we know of Rebels and like later Star Wars content. Totally. So I feel like Rex plays a pretty integral part in like that storyline, and I think we need to get to a point where he is one of 3 clones on another random planet. That
is so fucking depressing. It only just hit me like where we're at in this show to where they find Rex, and it's like, assumedly that's the last 3 clones. Like, that sucks.
Totally. Or even if it's not, like they're all like, and I think like
they're all scattered.
If anything, I think we could see more Rex, because I think that's probably that alongside this whole cloning storyline is the main things they've got to kind of wrap up with this show, or like get to a certain point. And so I think we'll see more. I don't know how much more I want to see of him, because he's so much in Clone Wars and stuff, and I feel like I'd rather spend time with the newer characters, but at the same time we do know that he gets to that point, so I feel like it's pretty important to help us understand where we get there. But no, it's cool. It's great. I think that's about it. We don't want to I was going to say beat a dead horse. This show's not a dead horse. It's quite, not a dead horse. Quite a living horse. Quite a fun little horse. Little horse? That's a pony.
Horse. It's a sweet pony. That's what Bad Batch is.
To wrap it up, I just the one thing that I'm so grateful for in this season, and which makes it maybe the best piece of Star Wars content in forever, is the fact that there's no Pikes.
We did go a whole show.
A whole season without Pikes. So thank you for that. I think that's... You
said that they'll be in the next episode of Mando now. They heard you.
They will. They will. And that's why this season of Bad Batch is the best season of Star Wars. Ever. I think we can just wrap it up there. I think that is the perfect conclusion. If you want to go watch Bad Batch, go watch it. If you haven't been spoiled on the entire season so far, go watch it. There's no Pikes. It'll be great. You'll enjoy it so much. No spice. Or maybe there is spice. Whatever. I don't really remember. Maybe. You'll find out if you go watch season 2 of Bad Batch. If you want to watch more of us, you can head to... I was going to do the card thing, but I can never remember the link.
ETTO.card.co with 2 R's in the card.
2 R's in the card, not 2 A's?
No. Maybe? Okay. Fuck. Don't do that to me, Ben. Okay. I've been saying R for ages.
Oh, no.
Keep wrapping it up. I'll find out.
Yeah, if you want to head to etto.card.co, spelling to be confirmed.
R.
Then you can get all our links, which includes YouTube, Twitch, podcasts, social medias, perhaps, whichever one of those is still living within the next month. Looking at you, Twitter. And if you want to catch us live, as I said, you can head over to our Twitch. If you want to get more content like this, you can head to our YouTube. We do a bunch of spoiler casts. We talk about Star Wars whenever there's Star Wars to talk about. And other people talk about other stuff, but we don't care about them. They suck. We're great because we love Star Wars. Hope you love Star Wars. Boys. And until then, I've been Ben.
I've been Will. Bye.
Bye.